Everything transformed in an instant when I heard my husband's harsh tone over the phone. He sharply questioned, "Why do you always fall apart when I need you most?" He seemed indifferent to the fact that I was in the hospital, fretting over our baby's well-being. Instead, he grumbled about his hunger and the absence of my home-cooked meals, mentioning that he was too impatient to wait and was opting to dine out with his parents. This left me to sort out my way back from the hospital. His words exacerbated my anxiety and sorrow, heightening my fears for our unborn child's safety and my ability to shield them. Previously, I was a committed cosmetic salesperson, praised for my diligence and success, with numerous accolades to my name. Falling in love with my husband felt like a fairy tale, and our courtship swiftly transitioned to marriage. Upon discovering my pregnancy, I faced the challenging decision to leave my job to mitigate the risk of miscarriage, prioritizing our future family's welfare. As my pregnancy advanced, the support from my husband dwindled. Initial excitement gave way to irritation. Daily tasks became Herculean efforts, and I struggled to live up to his expectations. His constant queries about lunch and dismissive remarks about the simple meals I managed to prepare left me disheartened. He trivialized my pregnancy challenges, not recognizing them as legitimate health concerns, which left me feeling isolated and unsupported. This was a stark departure from the man I once fell deeply in love with. He stopped attending doctor's appointments and showed little interest in household duties that were increasingly difficult for me. Our home, once a haven of love and mutual respect, turned into a ground of constant strife as I endeavored to safeguard both myself and our baby. Despite these trials, I held on to hope that understanding and patience would return to our relationship. Perhaps he was just overwhelmed and stressed from mentoring a newcomer at work. I reassured myself that things might improve once the baby arrived and his workload eased. Hoping for a harmonious family routine, I often found myself whispering words of encouragement to my growing belly, trying to keep a positive outlook despite my physical discomfort and the tension at home. Unfortunately, the situation with my husband hadn't gotten any better. To add to the strain, my in-laws began dropping by without warning, further complicating matters. They would critique the cleanliness of our house and express concern about how we would cope with the baby, yet they still expected immediate service when it came to meals. These visits left me feeling defeated and anxious, and my husband's lack of support, as he sided with their criticisms, only deepened my feelings of inadequacy. One day, while heavily pregnant, I had gone out to buy groceries but ended up collapsing from sheer exhaustion. I regained consciousness in the hospital, relieved to hear that our baby was unharmed. The doctor advised several days of rest. I noticed missed calls from my husband on my phone, and, hoping for some sign of his concern, I returned his call. However, instead of comfort, his first words were sharp and accusatory. "Where have you been?" His indifference to my well-being and our baby's safety chilled me to the bone. I tried to explain, "I'm sorry I collapsed at the store and ended up in the hospital. They've put me on IV fluids and want me to stay here for a few days to recover." His reply was curt and devoid of empathy. "You collapse and I'm supposed to care? Why don't you answer when I call? You're so slow," he retorted, worsening my distress. Overwhelmed by his harshness, I pleaded with him, "Please stop yelling, it's not good for the baby." But he dismissed my concerns, continuing to complain, "We're starving here waiting for your awful cooking, and you're just relaxing in the hospital." It was evident he preferred dining out with his parents rather than supporting me in my time of need. This realization underscored the stark negativity surrounding our home environment, an atmosphere I feared would envelop our child. Despite my precarious health, the sharp sting of my husband's anger and apparent indifference was crushing. I hung up the phone, feeling utterly abandoned and heartbroken. As I shuffled back to my hospital room, tears flooded my cheeks, a stark reflection of my vulnerability. It was in this low moment that a familiar, comforting voice reached out. "Are you okay?" Looking up, I saw Elizabeth, a cherished acquaintance from my days as a cosmetic salesperson, extending a comforting towel toward me. Seeing Elizabeth again brought me an immense sense of relief and warmth. "Elizabeth, it's you. I'm so glad you remember me." Our unexpected meeting was like a beacon of kindness and connection in my darkest hour. To me, Elizabeth was more than a customer. After a difficult divorce that had eroded her confidence, leaving her to shun makeup completely, I approached her at the cosmetics counter one day, eager to help her rediscover some joy in self-care. The transformation wasn't just about her appearance. It revitalized her self-esteem and marked a significant step in her emotional recovery. Over time, Elizabeth became more than a client. She became a friend. However, about 6 years before I resigned from my job, Elizabeth stopped visiting, and I often wondered about her whereabouts. Now, here she was, offering support when I needed it most. "I had been hoping to reconnect with you, Elizabeth," I admitted, surprised yet grateful. She explained her absence. "I'm sorry for just showing up out of the blue. I've been working abroad, running a business overseas. It's been hectic, and I haven't had the chance to enjoy summer or good food in ages. Once things settled down." Her words trailed off, but her presence was a profound comfort, reminding me of the bonds that could still sustain me through tough times. When Elizabeth mentioned she had just returned and sought me out, her laughter lightened the mood. "Believe it or not, right after I got back, I tried to find you," she said with a chuckle. It turned out that Elizabeth had returned with a mild health scare, a pestis, which fortunately was caught early and easily treatable with medication. If this had happened while I was still overseas, the treatment costs would have been astronomical. "So in a way, I'm glad it happened here," she explained, her optimism and warm smile infectious. This unexpected reunion lifted my spirits, and we joyfully reminisced about the old times. As our conversation deepened, Elizabeth's expression turned thoughtful. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but you seemed quite upset earlier. What's going on?" Trusting Elizabeth not just as a former customer but as a genuine friend, I confided in her about my current struggles with my husband and in-laws. "I'm really worried about bringing my baby into this environment. I'm afraid they'll be treated the same way I am. And without my job, the idea of living independently, especially with a child, feels daunting." To my astonishment, Elizabeth made an incredibly generous offer. "I actually have an apartment you could use. I manage a few properties from a project I started with the land I inherited. It's a cozy 3-bedroom with a separate bathroom, solid roof, and good walls, and it's in a safe neighborhood close to supermarkets and a police station. You wouldn't need to pay a deposit right now, and you can start paying rent whenever you're ready. It's a really good deal. What do you think?" Elizabeth's excitement and sincerity were palpable, and I couldn't help but laugh, overwhelmed by her kindness. "Are you sure you can offer it at such great terms?" I asked. She replied confidently, "Absolutely. I trust you'll take good care of the place, and I think it's important to support each other during tough times." Her gesture was a profound reminder of the good in the world, just when I needed it most. "You're more than welcome to stay there," Elizabeth assured me with a warm, comforting smile. Her unexpected kindness was like a beam of light in my dark times, offering not just a place to stay, but also a chance for a new beginning. Overwhelmed by her generosity, I gratefully accepted her offer. A few days later, after the doctors had cleared me, I didn't return to the home I shared with my husband. Instead, I moved straight into the apartment Elizabeth had arranged for me. She had taken care of everything over the phone with such ease and kindness that it left me in awe. Settling into Elizabeth's cozy and welcoming apartment, I felt a twinge of guilt for not paying rent immediately, but Elizabeth brushed it off with a laugh, insisting I should not worry about it. While my husband was at work, I took the opportunity to go back to our old house to collect my belongings. The place felt strangely hollow and abandoned, mirroring the emptiness inside me. But Elizabeth's support extended beyond merely providing shelter. She connected me with a lawyer who had previously helped her. This connection solidified my decision to file for divorce. The lawyer was encouraging, and with each visit to the hospital confirming my baby's health, my resolve strengthened. One day, leaving the hospital, my heart sank as I saw my husband, John, waiting for me. Panic set in, and despite my attempts to leave quickly, my pregnancy slowed me down. He confronted me, demanding answers about the lawyer and our new living arrangement while gripping my arm tightly. Standing my ground, I insisted that any discussions about divorce, compensation, or child support should be conducted through my lawyer. I refused to go home with him. Just then, a young woman intervened. Lisa, as she introduced herself, stepped protectively in front of me. Her interaction with John was tense, revealing an underlying strain. Lisa firmly told him that he couldn't force me to leave against my will. Her bold stance was a stark contrast to my vulnerability at that moment, offering yet another unexpected layer of support when I needed it most. Lisa's firm stance and her threat to call the police shifted the dynamics dramatically, giving me a much-needed boost of hope and the courage to stand my ground. Seeing her determination, John quickly retreated, his fear evident as he hurried away. I was overwhelmed with relief, my knees nearly giving way under me. Lisa promptly came over to support me, asking with genuine concern, "Are you okay?" I apologized, feeling a rush of emotions, but she brushed it off and immediately hailed a taxi to ensure I got home safely. Despite my protests about troubling her, she reassured me that it was no bother at all. When I shared my address with her, she was surprised to find out that I lived just below her. What a serendipitous twist that we were neighbors. Lisa, always cheerful and kind, revealed that she was a new employee at John's workplace. She had reported his inappropriate conduct, which had resulted in him being stripped of his mentorship role. John had a history of being insensitive, especially towards female colleagues, often making inappropriate remarks about personal matters such as menstruation and marriage. Lisa confided that the issues with John extended beyond professional boundaries, something I had painfully experienced during my pregnancy. In the 2 weeks since that encounter, Lisa and I had grown close, frequently sharing meals and conversations. She informed me that due to multiple complaints, John had been reassigned to a subsidiary of the company. Intriguingly, Lisa turned out to be the daughter of Elizabeth, the very Elizabeth who owned the apartment I was staying in. John had often boastfully mentioned managing Elizabeth's account, but his poor conduct had led to his demotion. Elizabeth had been instrumental in ensuring that John was held accountable for his actions at work and towards me. Lisa, motivated by a desire to address workplace issues based on her own merits, had only acted upon realizing my connection to her mother. Elizabeth encouraged Lisa to take proactive steps, emphasizing the importance of standing up against inappropriate behavior in any environment. This revelation deepened the bond between us, as we both appreciated the strength and support we derived from our shared connections. With John's diminished role and increased responsibilities at work affecting his income, he found himself in a drastically altered position. Elizabeth, leveraging her vast experience, counseled me to stand firm and not succumb to John's attempts to elicit sympathy. This guidance proved invaluable as I moved forward with my decision to divorce him. Despite his attempts to reach out through our lawyer, sharing tales of his difficult job situation and expressing longing and apologies, I stayed firm in my resolve. Supported staunchly by Elizabeth, John eventually had no option but to accept the divorce and agree to the terms, which included child support and compensation. As I navigated this new chapter, another challenge arose with my in-laws, particularly my father-in-law, who was overly enthusiastic about the baby being a boy. I felt the undercurrents of impending issues, and soon enough my in-laws made their intentions clear. One day, as I was leaving the house, my father-in-law confronted me aggressively. He grabbed my arm and declared that once born, I must relinquish my baby to the family, claiming the baby was the rightful heir. Despite my attempts to break free, his grip was unyielding. At that moment, Lisa's commanding voice cut through the tension. With her expertise in judo, a skill honed to protect herself and her mother during their toughest times, she intervened. Swiftly, she employed a judo maneuver to release me from his hold. Lisa, a nationally recognized judoka, sternly reprimanded my father-in-law for his disregard of John's behavior and his intrusive demands on my life. She staunchly defended my right to a fresh start and made it clear that any further meddling was unacceptable. Just then, the sound of approaching sirens signaled that help was on the way. Lisa had prudently called the police before stepping in to assist me. My mother-in-law, who had been observing from a nearby car, remained silent as the police arrived and detained both her and my father-in-law. The arrest of my father-in-law was a pivotal moment, prompting my mother-in-law to reflect and subsequently decide to divorce him, signaling a significant shift in my tumultuous familial relations. When John tried to convince his mother to let him accompany her to start anew in the countryside, she firmly refused, communicating through the lawyer. She apologized for her previous actions and left some money as a gesture of goodwill. Elizabeth helped me understand that such gestures often come from a place of seeking forgiveness and a desire to contribute to my son's future, especially after a significant life change like leaving a marriage. Although surprised by her turnaround given her prior behavior, I appreciated her efforts to make amends. After the divorce was finalized, I welcomed a healthy baby boy into the world. Choosing solitude over a troubled life with John, my mother-in-law moved to the countryside. Meanwhile, when my father-in-law was released from custody, he discovered that before leaving, my mother-in-law had demolished their house. With nowhere else to go, he moved in with John, which only compounded their issues and eventually led to John resigning from his job due to his tarnished reputation. Despite these upheavals, child support payments were consistently handled, likely facilitated by Elizabeth and the lawyer. Lisa's courage and integrity at work did not go unnoticed. She was promoted to project leader, earning the respect and admiration of her peers. Elizabeth's various projects, including initiatives for women-only properties and housing for foreigners, continued to thrive. As for me, once my son was old enough, I planned to rejoin the workforce. Elizabeth had graciously offered me a position at a new high-end cosmetic store she was launching. Both Elizabeth and Lisa continued to be a great source of support and showed immense affection for my son, treating him as if he were Elizabeth's grandchild. Lisa also made time to visit us regularly. Their unwavering strength and kindness were not only a comfort during my most challenging times, but also a powerful example of the resilience and protectiveness I aspired to embody for my son. Inspired by these remarkable women, I was determined to provide the same level of strength and protection for my son as they had for me.
My mother can no longer walk. She needs help. I thought maybe. I started to explain to my mother-in-law, my voice trembling. I don't care, she cut me off coldly. You're the wife in this family. Your job is to take care of this household. Let your family handle their own problems. Her words cut me deeply, and I turned to my husband for support. I couldn't care less about your parents, he snapped, glaring at me with anger. And I won't say anything to my mom either. Don't you dare bring this up again. Just shut up and focus on your responsibilities, Warren added, his voice filled with fury. Their words struck me to the core, but neither of them suspected that their dark secrets would soon destroy the life they considered their own. My name is Everly. I'm a housewife, married for 25 years, living with my husband Warren and my in-laws. I have one grown son who has left home and now lives alone. A few years ago, my father-in-law fell ill and is now in need of nursing care. I am always busy taking care of him. My mother-in-law is in good health, and I want to help her take care of him, but she leaves everything to me and does nothing. My husband also throws everything onto me even though he lives with us. My mother-in-law and my husband are unthinkable to me, as they disregard their own husband and father and act selfishly. Everly, I told you to do the laundry yesterday, didn't I? Why didn't you wash these clothes? I was going to wear it today, my mother-in-law scolded. Sorry, I was busy yesterday. Can't you substitute it for something different? I said, trying to keep calm. I can't believe you can say you're busy when you just sit at home. she retorted. To my mother-in-law, it seems that doing all the housework and taking care of my father-in-law equates to just sitting at home. Yesterday, your husband seemed to be feeling well. Are you really going to the play? I asked her. Of course I am, she replied. A friend of mine invited me to take a break from caring for my husband. Of course I have to go. Besides, he got sick because you didn't take care of him properly. So take better care of him, she instructed. Taking a break from caring? Even though you haven't been taking care of him at all? I thought, trying to hold back my frustration. Besides, it's my mother-in-law's fault that my father-in-law got sick the other day. On a whim, she decided to make him look better by airing out his room. She completely forgot she had left the window open and went out for the day. By the time she returned, the room had been freezing, and my father-in-law was chilled to the bone. After listening to her reproaches, I had to agree. I see. Then can you please help me take care of him when you get back? I asked. Of course not, she snapped. Caring for him is your job. I'm off now. Good luck with all that. With that, my mother-in-law left the house. My mother-in-law constantly finds a reason to go out several times a week. Meanwhile, my husband works long hours on weekdays and is rarely home on weekends or holidays because of his job. When he does have time to be at home, he usually just relaxes and doesn't engage much in anything else. Warren, I need to give your father a bath. Can you help me with that? I asked my husband. I'm tired from work. Let me rest on my day off, he responded dismissively. I'm doing everything I can to take care of your father and the housework, I retorted. You just stay at home. I go to work every day. Who do you think you owe your life to? My husband snapped. Then can you ask your mom to help me a little? She's always out. She never helps me, I pleaded. What did she say? He asked, uninterested. She said it's the wife's job to take care of him, but isn't taking care of your own husband part of that? I replied. If that's what my mom says, then just do it. It's not my problem. I'm tired. Just leave me alone today, he muttered, heading to his room and leaving me, as always, to take care of my father-in-law on my own. The only good thing about this house is that my father-in-law is a good man. When I take care of him, he says, I'm sorry. If I wasn't like this, I'd scold my wife and son. Thanks for everything. This is how my father-in-law shows his appreciation for me. My father-in-law is the only one who has ever thanked me. Although I am mistreated by his wife and son, my father-in-law is still kind to me. Caring for him is hard work, but talking with him is a healing time for me. How horrible of my mother-in-law and my husband to neglect my father-in-law like this. I spent my days caring for my father-in-law and doing housework with these thoughts in my mind. Then one day, I received a phone call from my father. Everly, oh my God, your mother fell down the stairs and was rushed to the hospital, he exclaimed, his voice filled with panic. I had previously warned my mother to be cautious on the stairs, especially since her legs and back had been getting weaker lately. Next week, my brother was planning to visit with his grandchildren for the first time in a long while, and it seems she was preparing for their arrival when she missed a step and fell. She apparently fell from a significant height, and the sound of the impact was loud. Although she remained conscious, she couldn't move, so an ambulance was called. The examination revealed a fractured femur. The doctor explained that it would be difficult for her to stand or walk on her own, and she would need to be hospitalized for some time. My parents' house is about an hour's drive away. Of course, I'm worried about my mother with a broken bone, but I'm also worried about my father, who has to live alone for a while. And even once she gets out of the hospital, she will need nursing care if she can walk. My parents have always been close, and my father used to help out with the housework. But I thought it would be very tough for him, who is not used to doing both nursing care and housework. I do it every day, and it is very rough on me. My brother and his family live far away, so it would be difficult for him to take care of my parents. So I am the only person who can take care of them. I talked to my mother-in-law about it. So, I began, feeling anxious. My mother has broken a bone and can't move. She won't be able to stand up even after she's discharged from the hospital. I would like to take care of my parents from now on. Could you give me a few hours a day starting tomorrow? I would appreciate it if you could take care of your husband either in the morning or in the afternoon, I asked, trying to keep my tone polite. I thought my mother-in-law would be willing to take care of him for a few hours a day. But then she said, why should I be the one to take care of him? Isn't that your responsibility? You should be taking good care of him. As for your mother, can't your father and brother handle that? You don't need to go there. No, my brother lives far away, I retorted. My father can't take care of the house and care for my mother by himself. He might be able to manage if I go and help out a little. I don't care, she replied coldly. You're the wife of this family, so you have to take care of this household. Your family can figure it out on their own. It doesn't have to be every day. They just need a little help. Even if it's only for 3 hours, I'd appreciate it, I pleaded. I told you, I don't care. I won't take care of my husband. You need to do that. With that, my mother-in-law left the house again. I wondered why she hated taking care of her own husband so much. My mother-in-law stubbornly refused to take care of him and pushed me to do it. I decided to talk to my husband about it. I explained to my husband, my own mother can no longer walk. She needs help. I thought maybe. I started to say, but he interrupted me. I told you that there is no way I'm going to take care of my dad. How many times do I have to tell you that I'm busy and tired? But my parents are going through a hard time too. They could use a little help, I protested. I don't care about your parents, Warren snapped. You're my wife now, so act like one. Anyway, I won't help you. I won't say anything to my mom either. Don't ever bring it up again. Just shut up and mind your own business. Understand? You're the wife of the family, he concluded. Both my mother-in-law and my husband said the same thing. It's true that I'm the wife of this house, but my mother-in-law and husband have spent more time here with my father-in-law than I have. I know it's not a matter of time, but why do they hate it so much? I couldn't help but wonder. But that's not the point now. As I prepared dinner, I wondered if there was any way I could take care of my parents at home. While I was thinking about what to do, I heard a cheerful, "I'm home," from the front door. My son had come to visit. What's wrong? You didn't tell me you were coming, I said, surprised. I thought I would just stop by, he replied, glancing around the room. Huh? Dad and Grandma aren't here. How's Grandpa doing? I'm gonna go talk to him. With that, my son went to see his grandfather, chatted with him briefly, and then came back into the kitchen. What's wrong, Mom? You don't look well, he said, concerned. I hesitated before explaining. Well, you see, I told my son what had been happening at my parents' house, and how I wanted to help them but was being blocked by my mother-in-law and husband. My son already knew how hard it was for me to take care of my father-in-law and manage the house alone. He has always taken my struggles seriously, even when his father and grandmother wouldn't lift a finger. Talking to him felt like a rare opportunity to share my feelings. I'm sorry for complaining, I said. Don't worry, Mom, you're doing fine, he replied with a strained smile. Actually, I came here today to tell you something, he added. What is it? I asked. I heard something from a friend who lives around here, my son began. It was the answer to something I had always wondered about. When my friend told me, I didn't think it was possible, but I did some digging. I got the results today, and I was so pissed off that I came here. My son handed me an envelope. When I opened it and saw the contents, I was stunned. This can't be true, can it? I said, struggling to believe what I was seeing. I was ready to give them a piece of my mind, he continued, but neither Dad nor Grandma were around. I'm so frustrated, but I have to head home early. Sorry, Mom. No matter what, I'm always on your side. That day, the only thing I managed to do was feed my father-in-law. I couldn't do anything else. I thought hard about what I should do from now on, and decided that divorce was my only option. I felt bad for my father-in-law, but it was the only thing that came to mind when I considered everything my mother-in-law and husband had done to me. I wanted to get divorced right away, so I looked online for divorce papers and found they were available for download. I rushed to a local library and printed them out. When I got home, I signed in the wife column, packed my belongings, and waited for my husband and mother-in-law to return. My husband came home first. Welcome home, I greeted him. I need to talk to you. I hope you're not talking about taking care of my dad again, he said dismissively. I told you not to bring it up again. You're persistent. Well, I said calmly, I'm really worried about my parents, so I'm going home. Hey, what are you thinking? He shouted. What are you going to do about this house? What are we supposed to do if the wife doesn't take care of the house? Why don't you think for yourself? You're the son of this family, right? You should help out a little, I replied. I'm tired from work. I had to work today, you know, he lied. It was obvious after seeing the evidence my son had brought me. While we were arguing, my mother-in-law came home. What's going on? It's so noisy. I can hear you all the way outside, she asked, concern evident in her voice. I need you to take care of your husband from now on. I'm worried about my parents, I concluded, turning to her. Oh, Everly, she scoffed. Are you still talking about that? You are responsible for working for this household. You should know your priorities. Yes, I replied firmly, finally resolute. That's why I've decided to move out of this house. From now on, my feelings are my priority. Saying that, I placed the divorce papers I had just signed on the table. The two of them whitened their eyes when they realized it was a divorce decree. Their faces turned red in a flash. Divorce papers? When did you get this? If you leave, who will take care of Dad? Don't you have any love for your family? My husband asked, his voice trembling with disbelief. Love? I responded sharply. How can you say such a thing to me? Do you still think that after seeing what I've seen? I slammed the envelope my son had given me on the table. With the force of the slam, out of the envelope came a picture of my husband at the scene of the affair. He was walking arm in arm with a young woman and entering her apartment. There was also a picture of my mother-in-law having dinner with a man. What? My husband exclaimed, staring at the photos in shock. I heard there's a rumor going around the neighborhood that you met with this woman again today, I continued. How can you talk about love for your family when you've been seeing other women? Everly, this is a little... What's going on? My husband stammered, looking increasingly confused. I have more proof other than pictures, I said coldly. I know your mother was also seeing someone. The friend you kept talking about was a man, wasn't it? I asked her. My mother-in-law, who had remained silent until now, hesitated before saying, That's right. It's my husband's fault for not being able to move. Then why don't you take care of him and stay with him? I shot back. I don't want to, she replied flatly. Why should I be the one to take care of him? Anyway, I said firmly, I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving, so you two have to take care of the rest. I took the photos I had thrown on the table and went to the front door with them. Before I left, I went to speak to my father-in-law. I'm sorry, I said softly. Thank you for everything. I heard everything, he replied, his voice heavy with emotion. I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Please go and take care of your parents. I'll be okay here. He paused, then added, I guess that's not something I should say. I'm sorry. Hurry up and go. I was so sorry to my father-in-law, who sent me off with a smile, and I felt bad to leave him. I returned to my parents' house on the same day, and my father welcomed me with a smile. I'll admit I felt a little stressed shortly after I left that house. My mother-in-law, in particular, seemed overwhelmed by the constant demands of my father-in-law. She struggled to manage everything on her own and rarely had a moment to herself. I can't even see my friend anymore, she complained over the phone one day, her voice heavy with frustration. When my husband didn't submit the divorce papers, I decided to get help from a lawyer. At the lawyer's suggestion, I sent a content-certified letter to my husband and his lover. Apparently, his lover was one of his subordinates at work. Thanks to the content-certified letter, the company found out about the affair, and my husband was transferred to a department that was notorious for its boredom. The other woman resigned because she couldn't stand the affair being discovered. My husband will now be able to participate more in his father's care. I sincerely hope that he will take care of my father-in-law with love. Meanwhile, I did everything I could for my mother, who is now in a wheelchair, until she was discharged from the hospital. I redecorated an open room into a room exclusively for my mother and prepared a nursing bed for her. We also installed a handrail in the hallway so that she could practice standing and walking as much as possible. My mother was discharged from the hospital after a few days, though she seemed uneasy about my divorce from my husband. Despite her worries, she softly said, I'm really happy to be able to live with you again after such a long time, her face lighting up with a faint smile. At first, she had a hard time moving. I accompanied her to rehabilitation, and she seemed to be getting a little more comfortable. My father was also very supportive of my mother's care and took her for walks in her wheelchair. I realized, once again, that it was impossible to take care of my mother without the support of my family. Maybe I don't have much time left to spend with my parents. I don't like to think about it too much, but thinking about it makes me want to cherish every moment I have with my parents.